Welcome back, everybody, to your daily update on the state of the Malazan Empire, or something like it, and it might just be the last one because this is the Crippled God, Chapter 24, and Epilogues 1 and 2, or the end. and I finished reading it yesterday, and then I didn't have time to record the video, so yeah, I'll do one final thing about like everything and so forth later, I guess. But until then, this is my like chapter recap for the final one. And yeah, let's do this. Cheers. All right, now here's the interesting thing: is like the chapter 24 with all of the stuff that happens to the bone hunters is that final point where we meet up with them again after the actual battle at the spire that was chapter 23. So we know already that the heart of the crippled god has been freed, but that's not all. So now we find out what the bone hunters were actually doing, and that's like these twofold things: that one, like defending the actual place where the crippled god, where the sword was, is put, the Otterterrell sword is put, and that's the Marines, like our main focus, Fiddler's gang and everyone like that. There is obviously the regular infantry, regular army as well, being the rest of the bone hunters. So we have all these like battles. Basically, we have two battles. We have that one of the regular infantry, that regular army that is trying to keep the main army of the Froctal Assail away from that hill to, prevent them from preventing what is planned, to wit, the crippled god, to free the crippled god. And so we once again get a lot of combat, although it's not as much combat as in chapter 24. It's more spread out. We see how all these like threads converge onto on this like final thing there. And this is, I feel, the very interesting or very impressive bit to actually witness how Stephen Erickson manages to pull all of that together, right? All of it. It's not like for like stuff that happens like books and books ago, like Heroic Ghost Hand. I mean, we had a hint of that at the beginning of the Crippled God, and we met his ghost in Dust of Dreams already. But the point is, things that happened in the Bone Hunters suddenly become important again, and everything like that. Yeah, that's just absolutely impressive to see how all these small moving bits in this huge sprawling thing kind of come to an end. I mean, not every story, but a lot of them. Yes. And they sort of come, while it's closure, it's sort of a bittersweet closure in a way. There's no real happy ends because people like Gessler and Stormy are still dead. There is a few moments that are just like absolutely heartbreaking. When Tavor and Ganos Paran meet and she just says, "I lost her." That one is just like, I don't know, that's just like brutal in a lot of ways. But once again, we have this idea that we humans make our gods, and maybe making better gods is what can happen when we put all our aspirations and good things into our into gods, which comes to that point where we have like all the gods of war have been killed off at this point, because humans keep on fighting and are apparently better at it than anyone else. But also a lot of other like that point that it in the end is about us people, and once again, people means more than just humans in a way, although humans seem to be the most populous one, the largest group on that planet at this point. It's still very much the idea that as people, as thinking, living, breathing people are basically the ones who have it in their power to actually do something about the future, to actually break away from fate, or at least fight it as far as possible, fight it to a standstill if possible. And yeah, how to say, yeah, maybe do something about a kind of hopeless situation. Um, as is seen here in a lot of ways, where people like grow beyond their like limits in a way, and that's something that obviously we know as people, or should know as humans in general, in our world here as well, right? It's like in extreme situations we are able to do extreme things, like grow beyond our limits and grow beyond ourselves. It's kind of sad that it apparently only happens in like extreme situations, and a lot of us never like do that. However, another thing is obviously the redemption of Captain Blizdig, Fist Blizdig, near the end, when he is still sort of angry at the adjunct, and still wants to kill her, and she just tells him what she expects from him, and even acknowledges the fact that that he would have been much better at as a fist, and maybe even high fist of 7 cities as an administrator, but that he never had a chance for that because obviously Malik Rel still wanted like him dead because of what he did in Iran at that point. So that she kind of saved his life in a way, but still makes him bitter, and he still doesn't actually believe in it until like that point when the battle's actually joined, and then he actually does his proper job. So even like her, not faith, but support of Ballistic through all the dumb shit he pulls over that march, most of it out of desperation to be sure, but still, even that one is kind of interesting. Another thing that I found very well done is how many like characters find redemption and find like closure in this last chapter. You have that point where Gaul, the Kundral do their charge, and it echoes like when the army then just calls out Kundral, 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 which is echoes beautifully that scene in Deadhouse Gates when the Kundral declare the Wiccans to be the bravest fighters in the world, and then even Gaul gets his own personal redemption with his last action killing the Forkful assail that desperately needs killing at this point. Or we have Korab dying in battle, in glory, and finally having this glorious fight there. Or Cuttle dying. Those are those quiet moments when Cuttle is already dying, and he's like goes like, yeah, remembers his childhood. We have that echo from like early on in Dust of Dreams, where he already talks about like all the mock combats they fought as kids with sticks, and he's like, you should have seen our last stands, they were something. It's like, yeah, man, that's rough in a way. And yeah, with the situation when you have at the end when even the bridge burners show up and like the old squad, and they talk one final time, or not exactly one final time, because obviously Fiddler calls him back later on for a correlate to have even closure for that one. Yeah, as I said, like it's incredibly impressive that even someone like even a like the dragon Korabas, whom I have so much empathy for her, because she needs to exist, but she has like through her existence the rest of existence works, but she has to basically suffer all the time, and even she gets something of a redemption by with her power of like negation. She manages to break the chains for the Crippled God, so he can then be freed. and she can, she gets that hole in the ground where she will be chained again, but she also gets the soul of Heboric, to keep her company. So I don't know what they will talk about, but it's certainly going to be some very interesting history lessons that dragon will get in the future. And like one thing that I found like really impressive, I'm still not quite sure if I understand it correctly, but the almost manifestation of Tia is like, we already know that Steven Erikson is the master of incredible, awesome shit, right? He likes to go to really dial the epic up to 11 most of the time, especially in those last couple of books. But this idea that all these dragons, as like the swarm of dragons, is slowly transforming into a gigantic dragon. That is something that I found like incredibly fascinating. I'm like, is Tiam actually an individual being, or is Tiam just like a, I don't know, manifestation emerging from like dragons once you get like a critical mass of dragons together and they suddenly become something more than themselves, this overarching being? I don't know. That was something that I don't fully understand. But it's this idea of you have like this like hundreds of dragons swarming and suddenly that swarm becomes something even more threatening and weird. That's crazy. But also, obviously, we get that final twist that the Malazan Book of the Fallen is written by the Crippled God, or now the Freed God, Kaminsat, who is returning to his people who have been coming to for him by spaceship, I guess. Well, by Jade spaceship, I guess. Um, but still, that the entire book that we've just read, the entire 10 novels, were basically told from his point of view to tell his story about how he got freed. And that's just like that revelation. I remember when I read that for the first time, I was like, whoa, that's crazy. It's like, because it goes so deep, that like for the first, like, I don't know, 2 books, 3 books, like at the end of like in Memories of Ice, you finally realize that maybe the Crippled God is sort of whom this may be about, and then he's the villain of the tale, and in the end he's still not the hero. I don't know what he is. But yeah, that whole thing, tying it all back in together, is something that not many people manage to do when they write a 10 novel series on that level. And as I said, like all these individual characters, the small people, I guess that's sort of the point that you get in the. And I feel that's well done, right? When you read that last chapter, when you realize that it's not even really about the Marines. Obviously, those are the ones that we followed for the most time, Hitler and the Marines and everything. But at the same time, it's about those we always assumed were there, which is the regular soldiers. And it's them who really do all the dirty work, right? They are the ones that march everywhere. They are the ones that cook, that fight. We just assume them to be there, the every person. And it's Tavore or Tavor, however you want to pronounce her, the adjunct, who is the only one who acknowledges them by being just like them, in her way, like. And they still, like, up to the end, when she finally calls out her names, their names, and we have that battle with the regulars. That's the first time we get names for some of them. That's the first time we actually they get acknowledged in the book, in a way. We always assume that they are there, and I guess that's sort of the point there, that not only for this army where they rise and do the thing at the end, but in everyday world, in our world, we have so many of these regular people that make sure everything runs, that make sure they go out and work every day in like these jobs where we don't look at people, whether it's, I don't know, working, like, you know, there's all these jobs that are not flashy. You know, like most of existence is not flashy. For most people, it is not flashy, and we usually never acknowledge the fact that those people do like their like best to make things work every single day, and they are unwitnessed. So are those like regular soldiers in the Malazan Book of the Fallen. And yeah, this book is basically the book that sings their praise, in a way, at the end. And it really comes back to the fact that, yes, if really necessary, we as humans have the power in us, have it in us to actually do the right thing for once. We usually don't do that because we, as a species, are rather mindless when it comes to a lot of things. We don't care about stuff a lot. And that's sad but true. But if it really counts, we can actually do the right thing, and it's that positive note at the end that yes, it worked out. It was, you know, it's still a fantasy story in a lot of ways, but that message is one that is clearly not just a fantasy book message. The idea that we as people, despite all the bad shit that's going down, we can still pull together, do something to make a change, to make it work. To make the world a better place. If we, like all these different groups coming together, the Jakut, some of the Imas, the Kachin Chimal, if we all, you know, come together and work together and make sure that this planet as a whole has room for each and every one of us, we might have a chance. And I guess that's a beautiful ending for a book, all in all. Then, of course, we get the epilogues about the funerals, and that final epilogue with fiddlers sitting on you know, the pier in Malaz Island and maybe fishing or maybe not. And then we zoom back to the weather vane up on top of Moxhold, which was the very first scene in the book. So that symmetry is another thing that is like incredibly fascinating to me. That symmetry that we have, basically, we have this like, thus we open these oil stained pages, start before we even start with the prologue of Gardens of the Moon, and then we zoom into on Malaz Island to the weather vane and all of that. Now we have all this crazy shit happening, and then we return to the weather vane, and then it says this ends the Book of the Fallen, and then we have a couple of lines about closing the book, and that is just like incredibly well done. Some like to give the whole thing this sprawling thing where you have a lot of like stuff that seemingly goes nowhere, to actually tie all of that back in together. That's just I don't know, it hits me every time. It's like I close that book and I'm emotionally wrung out again. So yeah, I guess that's sort of all of it right now. I forgot a lot, I'm pretty sure. We'll see what I'll do with all of that. But at this point, I just want to say thank you to each and every one of you who made it with me through all of this. I never expected it to work out this well. And yeah, I'll have more stuff really soon about all kinds of things. And yeah, until then, cheers.